We have a trade. It's between the Charlotte Hornets and the Miami Heat. Let's break it all down. I'm your host, Andrew Schlecht. The Heat are moving on from Kyle Lowry, who essentially just holds just a massive, massive expiring contract, and get back Terry Rozier in this deal. They do surrender a lottery protected 2027 first round pick. That's a little complicated, and we'll get into that here shortly. There will be a buyout with the Charlotte Hornets and Kyle Lowry, but let's first talk about the impact that a guy like Terry Rozier could have on the Miami Heat. So the Heat have their creators in Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo. Those are their primary creators, and what Rozier can bring is just like one more shot creator and a pretty good passer. He's been an improved passer. He's having a great season. For those that haven't kept up with the Charlotte Hornets, the 29-year-old guard is averaging 23 points, 6.6 assists, almost 4 boards a game, shooting 45, 35, 84 shooting splits. This is a guy that can provide a scoring punch from a team that really does need it. And I think this is a great deal. Obviously, Kyle Lowry has slowed down a lot. And as a guy who had started most games for them, had started coming off the bench for them the last couple of games, he's been back, but started 35 of 37 games for them and doesn't contribute a ton on a night-to-night basis. He's a guy that needs like a really small role if he's going to remain in the league. And so I think this is a really, really nice move for the Miami Heat, who are 20th in offense this season. I think like that's the main thing. Like they do have a positive net rating. It's because their defense is pretty good. They're 10th in defense, but their offense needed a jolt. They need somebody else other than Bam and Jimmy and Tyler Hero and Jaime Jaquez to contribute to putting up points on the board. And like that to me is the reason that you do this. You go get him. He can start. He can come off the bench. I think he's comfortable in both situations. But to me, he's kind of the guy that I think should start for this Heat team. And I think it's a really good move. It's pretty low risk. This team is going to win now. What will they look like in 2027? I don't know. Jimmy Butler is already 34 years old. Like the time is now. Like capitalize on it now. And you're the Miami Heat. And so you can get free agents. You can count on different ways to build your team up, which I think is important in this scenario too. In that they do have like an outgoing pick to the Thunder that apparently is going to, the way that this will happen is that this Hornets pick, the pick to the Hornets will convey 2 years after it conveys to the Thunder. And so the Thunder have a pick that I think it's kind of interesting. It's becoming more interesting as the Heat kind of move throughout this process. You still can't believe that a Miami Heat pick is going to be that valuable. But so the Miami owes the Thunder a top 14 protected pick in 25, so not this upcoming draft, but the one after. And if they're within the top 14, which is possible, they've been kind of teetering on the edge of that, but you'd have to kind of bet against it. But if it does convey to the Thunder, then that pick will come 2 years later to the Hornets as a lottery protected pick. And then if somehow the Heat falter, then the Thunder will get the unprotected pick of the Heat in 2026, which could be anything at all. The Heat have rarely been bad, and when they've been bad, they've been really bad, but they've typically had their own pick in the years that they've been bad. So we'll see. We'll see where that lands for OKC and for the Hornets. For the Hornets, they're going to buy out. They're going to buy out Kyle Lowry, which makes sense. They did not bring him on to help bolster their roster, but things get a little complicated. So you think about teams that Kyle could go to, and immediately you think, okay, a team just like I think about the Suns, a team that needs depth, a team that needs maybe a veteran presence. Those teams can't actually sign him for more than the non-taxpayer MLE. So if somebody wants Kyle Lowry and they want to pay him, teams like the Celtics, Nuggets, Warriors, Clippers, Heat, Bucks, and Suns cannot sign him um, as a buyout guy, um, which is really interesting because now, like the team that I gravitate toward is the Philadelphia 76ers. I think that's a team. Obviously, Kyle went to Villanova from the Philly area. I think like there's a match there for Philly, and they could just basically add him to their roster for free. I think him and Patrick Beverly could kind of duke it out for some minutes. Pat Bev has been okay for them this year, and so to me, I would like to have a guy like Kyle on the roster, especially if they're going to make a trade where perhaps they have to trade some of their depth to get a better player. That you could still have added depth by adding Kyle Lowry. Not that Kyle is going to make a huge impact, but I do think that that's, to me, a landing spot that at least makes some sense for Kyle once he is bought out. The other bit of news is that the Hornets are looking to acquire more assets as they move toward the trade deadline, which I just think is wise. They're in a spot where they have only won 10 games. Now, they had a nice victory against the Minnesota Timberwolves last night, but they're not going to make the play-in. They're not going to make the playoffs. They need to just go into cost-saving moves. And so the one that you look to is probably Gordon Hayward, is probably next on the chopping block. He makes the most money out of everybody. He is on an expiring deal, and I think there are teams that would like to deal for him. I think he's a pretty low-risk proposition for a lot of teams out there, and you could get him for relatively cheap, and you could probably give them maybe a second-round pick. He's a $31.5 million expiring contract. So to me, if they want to acquire a small asset and save some cash, I think Hayward is the next direction that you go if you're the Hornets. Beyond that, are they going to trade PJ Washington? Are they going to look to trade Miles Bridges, who has a no trade clause? So you have to approve whatever trade there was. And then beyond that, I don't know that there's even a player that could get you an asset or that you'd want to trade at this point. They want to build their on LaMelo. They want to build their on Mark Williams. Those are the kinds of guys that I think that you'd want to. I mean, Brandon Miller obviously had a great night last night. Brandon Miller's looking really good. So I think dealing away some of these veterans, I think, is the way to go. And Rozier, one of the oldest players on the team, Gordon Hayward, even older. That makes some sense. But ultimately, this whole deal is about making the Miami Heat better. The East is definitely not wide open because you have some really, really big time teams at the top in Philly, in Boston, in Milwaukee. But you know what they're all slightly afraid of, if not very much afraid of, is the Miami Heat. The Miami Heat have beaten these teams. And I think there is a fear factor when it comes to Eric Spoelstra, particularly Jimmy Butler. And if you continue to make this Miami team better, I think they're going to have a shot. You can't deny them. They've gotten better with the addition of Jaime Jaquez. Duncan Robinson has been rejuvenated, shooting 41% from three on 7 attempts. This is a good team. One of their weak spots was 37-year-old Kyle Lowry, who has taken up a lot of minutes for this team. You replace that with a highly productive player in Terry Rozier, who can actually fill it up. Now they're a little bit more dangerous. He's also a player that's played in the playoffs. So to me, this is a great deal. It's a low cost for Miami. They don't really give up any player that's contributing at a high level for them. And now they get to, head into the trade deadline and try to even improve even more. So I think this is a great deal for Miami. The right deal for the Hornets. I don't know that it's great, but it's the right deal for them, is to get an asset for Rozier and just move on and try to bottom out even more if you can. It's funny that you bottom out as one of the worst teams in NBA history. I know that the Pistons hold that, but it is astonishing that these teams have been so bad this year, and Charlotte's been one of them. And good on them for making these deals. They just need to do it, and it's good. They just won last night. It's great. Make the deal. get worse. Get a good draft pick, get some extra assets, move on, and now Miami is a little bit more dangerous. Thanks so much for tuning into this video. Please subscribe, hit the like button if you can, share this with others, and we'll talk to you guys again next time.